Republicans in the 70s and 80s. The war on Iraq, it wasn't hundreds, it was tens of thousands of Iraqi citizens, Syrian citizens who were tortured by American CIA, the various forces of the British Army. Nobody has actually been brought to justice for this mass torture that occurred in these years, extradition and torture. But I think the other thing that struck me recently is the revelation that there are 90, according to the secret documents circulated by this young man in America, who did a great justice. He should be regarded as a hero to reporting the crimes of these people. He's reported that the 97 Western Special Forces are operating in Ukraine. Now, if that's not a proxy war in which British and American imperialism are fighting that war, it obviously is. But just to say a little bit about the background, in 1990 there were meetings that took place on the winding up of the Warsaw Pact, and it was said by leading American politicians that NATO would not expand. What has happened over the last 30 years is continually expanded. Now, can you just imagine if the Mexican government agreed to have Russian nuclear weapons on the borders of America? I think Mexico wouldn't exist in the next month. It'd be smashed to smithereens. So the notion so we have an extremely provocative expansion of the NATO forces, which has actually freaked out the Russian leadership. And that has actually provoked the war. The other thing I think we should take up, and this is rarely talked about, is the question, is this a struggle between democracy and autocracy? Now, the Russian state is a repressive state. It's jailed and brutalized many anti-war campaigners. But in Ukraine, the Communist Party has been banned for 8 years. In March 2022, 14 left-wing parties, one with 10% of the MPs. Now, the Scottish Nationalists have got something like about 56 MPs. That is not 10% of the MP. So a party, it'd be like banning the Scottish Nationalists, was banned, and a whole series of other groups, which obviously come from the Trotskyist tradition and therefore clearly nothing to do with any sort of support for Putin. And I recently had an argument with, and there are people unfortunately on the left who do support this imperialist war in Ukraine. And I said, well, what do you say about the banning of the Communist Party? Now, I have different politics to the Communist Party, but I would be I said to him, well, the logic is to ban the Morning Star, ban the British Communist Party. And he replied that they were Russian agents in the Ukrainian Communist Party. I said, well, there have been Russian agents in the British Communist Party. But to ban that party would be a profound destruction of working class democratic rights in this country. And therefore it is not a conflict between a democratic Ukraine. The trade unions are largely suppressed. Actually in Russia, for all its authoritarian elements, the Communist Party is legal. It exists in parliament and is able to operate in a relatively limited way in that state. So we would say there are two features here, and this is where we might disagree with some of the organizers. We clearly called from the first for the withdrawal of Russian troops and against the expansion of NATO. But the other thing I just want to quickly mention is that there is the democratic question of Eastern Ukraine. And it is clear there is a sentiment and a support for Russia and its war in Eastern Ukraine. Eastern Ukraine has been subject, since the banning of the Communist Party before, of discrimination, attacks by fascist Nazi elements. They did form in the early 2000s a party which advocated autonomy, like the Scottish Nationalist Party. Now, perfectly valid thing to argue, that party was banned. The Communist Party, which represented a lot of people in Eastern Ukraine, is banned. And it seems to me in any democratic settlement, and there has to be a democratic settlement, a peace deal. That's why we say peace now in Ukraine. The rights of the East Ukrainian people must be defended. Their cultural rights and their political rights. So solidarity with this good initiative. We're organising a series of meetings with Claire Daly, an MP from the Irish Republic, MEP, who's touring the country and speaking at meetings in Brighton, Manchester and London, opposing this war. So we should reach out to broader forces who oppose this war. And I think there are people like Jeremy Corbyn, very, very limited and very, very who are speaking out on this. Anyway, and I think he could be more but I mean there are a number of MPs who do. That we need to link up with, and there are forces in the trade union movement. I'll just finish by saying there is a great choice, particularly for the socialists and the trade union movement. At the TUC last September, the TUC, or October, voted to increase the military budget. Now, in this context of massive pay cuts for hospital workers, for school workers, I remember the National Education Union, we have this mad proposal to increase military expenditure from 2%, 50 billion, to 75 billion. That's 25 billion. To settle the teachers' pay claim on a 10% increase would cost 2 billion. So that's the scale of money. So we should be united in fighting in the trade union movement against that cringing to the militarists and to the warmongers. And we look forward to your cooperation in that fight, as well as fighting for peace in Ukraine.